Добър ден, днес е 3 септември 2022 година. Това видео го правя от една седмица по проста причина, че е доста трудно да се слагат субтитри. Общо взето видеото е една презентация и Анди Schectman, който е, мисля, че е директор нещо като CEO на Miles Franklin, една голяма компания за продаване на злато в Щатите. Говори с Крис Айронс на подкаста на Крис. Крис получих директно от него, чрез имейл разрешение да ползвам тази част от видеото, от подкаста му и да я преведа. Значи говорим за около 23 минути, в които Анди говори как той вижда големия Ресет, за които говорим за Клаус Шваб, премахването на долара и тем подобни. Сега, още от сега да кажа, че де-факто не съм 100% съгласен с това, което той казва, но обобщенията, които прави и начина, по който свързва всичките тези случки през последните няколко години, 5-6 години и през последните 50 години естествено, както ги навързва, изглеждат много логични. Така, когато говорим за големия Ресет и историята с Клаус Шваб, естествено, ние не можем да забравим за Световния икономически форум, и докато Анди говори за големия Ресет, по-скоро за една тотална детоларизация на света и приемане на нова резервна валута в световен мащаб, вие ще видите, не мисля, че Клаус Шваб и Китай са в една лодка, така да се каже, и едва ли биха мели брашно, както е на български. Но това малко или много не пречи да изслушаме неговото мнение. Това, което всъщност аз не съм много съгласен, е, че той отнася големия Ресет само към детоларизацията на света. Де-факто, когато тази хегемония на долара се премахне, ще дойде нещо друго, което може да се окаже, че е и по-страшно, защото Русия и Китай заедно, и ще чуете, може би са доста по-зле от това, което имам в момента, не се знае. Така, изслушайте го, няма да коментирам по никакъв начин и накрая просто ще поговорим за една минута да си кажа и моето мнение.
I'd love to hear your insights on it.
Dude, I love the way you just said that because we're so parallel on so many things. And before I go down this rabbit hole with you, let me ask you a question as it pertains to everything you just said. Do you think Klaus Schwab and his comment, the Great Reset, do you think that's possible? Do you think that's intertwined into what you just said just a little bit?
It sure.
Because I have my own take on that.
It sure feels like it. It sure feels like, I used to laugh at the Soros, Schwab, Gates conspiracy theorists. I used to crack up about it. I was like, yeah, it's a little too much, these guys, couple global elite kind of pulling the strings. Now I feel like it's just happening. I don't even know if they intended it to happen or not. I don't really care. It's just happening. The inflation in the United States is actively stripping people of their personal property. I mean, whether or not they know it or not, that's a function of prices going up. As you have less and your quality of life, gets lower. Everything, now going to as a service, subscriptions. You want to ride a bike in the city, you have to pay monthly to have access to a community bike. You want to, get somewhere from point A to point B, you pay monthly now for a subscription to be able to, use this, that, and the other. Restaurants are starting to do it with seating. Oh, you get one active thing, a month if you want to come in and pay a certain fee. The fucking car wash next to me does it. $19.99 for unlimited washes now. Everything is moving to a subscription as a service at the same time that everything is getting too expensive and people are, whether they know it or not, they're being stripped of their wealth, they're being stripped of their purchasing power, and as a function of that, they're being stripped of their personal property. And so you have people moving back in with their parents because they can't pay rent. And this is something I was just discussing the other day. I have some close friends that there's two of them. They both work jobs. They have a kid. They can't afford to pay the fucking rent. And go ahead. So go ahead.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, dude. 100%. I mean, look, we look at the world the exact same way, I think. But I'd like to take you down the rabbit hole. And I'd like you to, because I think you're going to see it's very similar to what we're talking about, what you're talking about. I just try to connect the dots to several things that have happened. And look, when Klaus Schwab came out in 2019 and said there's going to be a great reset, I thought the guy was an idiot. But I'm going to ask you, and I don't want you to answer, because I know you know what the answer is. But I want people out there to think about this, because many of the things like what you just said, it's exactly when I gave a speech at Rick Rule's conference the other day. When I started it out, I said, I'm going to make some statements. And I bet none of you have heard much of this stuff yet. Where has your head been? And I guess it's because the media does a horrible job of telling us what's really going on. But there are certain signposts along the way that when you put it together, you see a map that's leading right to de-dollarization town. Right. And I want people to try to put these together and then ask themselves, how much of this stuff do I know? And then go and Google these things that I'm talking about and be freaked out for yourself. So the question that I'm going to ask your viewers or your listeners out there is, what makes the dollar the world reserve currency? Now, most people don't really know that answer. I ask people I talk to every day, do you know what makes the dollar the world reserve currency? Nobody ever knows. And look, it used to be pegged to gold. And at the end of World War II, the agreement was made between the U.S. and the rest of the world that we said to the governments of the world, listen, you can always exchange your dollars, will be the world reserve currency. You can exchange them for gold at a fixed rate of $35 an ounce. And this is the reason we held most of the world's gold, because countries were holding gold that earned no interest and cost money to store. They would give it to us. We would pay them $35 an ounce for it. They would in turn buy our treasuries, earning a rate of return, and they could always exchange their dollars for gold. It was a good deal for them at a fixed rate. In an honorable world and in a fair market, it's a great deal. Well, towards the end of the Vietnam War, President de Gaulle from France called us on that, realizing that we had printed more dollars to fund the war and issued more treasuries to expand our economy than we had gold backing it. And so he sent warships filled with dollars to New York Harbor demanding return of gold, and he got it. Bled half of the gold down nearly at the U.S. Treasury, and they closed the gold window. Nixon did in August of 1971. And it was at that point the dollar was backed by nothing, fiat. But it was 3 years later that Henry Kissinger flew to Saudi Arabia and worked out an agreement. Hey, we will protect you. Let's call it a joint military cooperation agreement. We will protect you, we'll provide you munitions, and for that OPEC will denominate oil globally in U.S. dollars. And that gave the dollar its world reserve status, once again being backed by oil. Every country in the world needed to buy dollars, creating this synthetic demand for the dollars in order to buy oil. It gave it the name the petrodollar. And it has been this way since 1973. And, the deal in essence was, we're going to sell you military equipment, we're going to defend the Saudi kingdom, and in return for that, you're going to denominate oil in U.S. dollars. And then that really is why the dollar is the world reserve currency. Correct. So let's look at a couple of things, and I'm going to make a statement. Let's call it a declaration as we go through this, that the Fed will not get tough on inflation. Because remember, we said that the 9.1 inflation would actually be 13.6%. At that time, when 13.6% and higher inflation in 1980, Volcker raised the rates to almost 20%. He got tough on inflation. We go to 2.25%. We ain't getting tough on anything. We will blow up this system. All right. There's my two premises. Dollar's world reserve currency because we protect Saudi Arabia. The Fed, who has blown up asset prices way too high, will not get tough on inflation. They don't want to be in history books. So let's go down this little road. And you tell me where you think if this is leading to the same place I do. So Some of these things we may have talked about briefly in previous interviews, but in 2017 we saw something very interesting, and that was the German Bundesbank out of nowhere made a very big deal on repatriating their gold from the New York Fed. It was all over the internet. Give us back our gold, give us back our gold. Within a few weeks of that happening, the Bank of Austria, the Bank of Turkey, the Bank of Hungary, the Bank of Poland, the Dutch National Bank, the Bank of Austria, many of the other European banks, all of the Eastern European banks, they all said to the Bank of England, to the New York Fed, give us back our gold. We want our gold back. And this was really unusual in 17 because this is when cryptocurrencies were taking off and gold wasn't doing much of anything. The next year, in 2018, those same banks, after being net sellers of gold for the previous decade prior, accumulated more gold than they did in the 60 years previously combined. So they're repatriating their gold from the Bank of England and the New York Fed. They're copiously accumulating it, buying more so than in the previous 60 years combined. And then the next year, 2019, they double that, up 100%. Within a few months of those purchases, the Bank of International Settlements, this is peg number one. This is tier number one, the first biggest event of my career, the first signpost in where I'm going, and that is the BIS, which is the central bank or central bank, reclassified gold as the world's only other tier one reserve asset. Now, this is a big, big deal. Media never talked squat about it, but you can go back and look from March of 2019. You'll see that BIS reclassifies gold on March 31st, 2019 to the world's only other tier one reserve asset. Now, most of the people in my industry thought it would be a special drawing rights from the International Monetary Fund, which is nearly 200 countries that would contribute to make a new currency to shore up the ills of the world reserve currency. But that never happened. Instead, they levy gold to a tier one reserve asset, which is equal to cash. The U.S. dollar and the U.S. Treasury have been the only tier one reserve assets by central bank standards since the end of World War II. And out of nowhere, after almost 80 years, oh, by the way, let's add gold. All right, so gold is the world's only other tier one asset. The next year, 2020, we see lots of things happening, right? We see the BIS, or excuse me, the IMF, 195 countries from around the world publicly declare they want a new Bretton Woods. They want a new system. They're sick and tired of the system based upon debt, and that was on their website. We see lots of other things happening, but signpost number two in this road to de-dollarization is the Belt Road Initiative. Most people in this country have never heard of it, and that is maybe, I don't know, it's a crime that they haven't heard of it, and it's something that I think will have a profound effect on all of our lives in the years ahead. This is China's attempt at connecting Asia, Africa, and part of Europe, the old Silk Road route. This is the largest infrastructure project in human history ever attempted. It's connecting 75% of human population. It's 45% of global GDP before industrialization. It's connecting these countries by bridges and roads and railways and maritime channels, digitally as well. When we think about the need for silver, 75% of human population will need to be connected digitally. This is huge for silver, but it's bigger for the de-dollarization when you realize that 75% of human population, and it's all settling on the new Chinese digital yuan. I'm going to get to the significance of this in a moment. Now, these roads and these bridges and these maritime channels, they will not be patrolled by anything other than military and commerce. This is the Panama Canal on steroids, and the United States is very conspicuously not part of it. And this is a very big deal, right? And I think this is signpost number two in de-dollarization. Signpost number three that no one seems to know about, may be the biggest event in all of our lives, and yet our media does such a horseshit job of telling us what's really important, Chris. You're the only one who talks about this stuff, and I give you credit for it, and that's why I sent you that email. And that is the linchpin of the dollar hegemony is the protection of the Saudi kingdom. The day we left Afghanistan, with our tails between our legs, leaving in what I believe was the most embarrassing moment north of Nancy Pelosi tearing up Trump's State of the Union, that is leaving Americans behind enemy lines. The country that I grew up in would never have ever thought that was possible. And you leave Americans behind enemy lines in a very hostile environment, leave our allies who fought for us, died for us, behind those same enemy lines, right, was deplorable, horrible. The day that happened, there's no coincidence. You go back and you Google August 24th, 2021, you will see a report on Google that Saudi Arabia signs a military cooperation agreement with Russia. Now, let me say that one more time slowly. Saudis sign military cooperation agreement with Russia. What makes the dollar the world reserve currency? The protection of the Saudi kingdom. Oh, Russia's now protecting the Saudi kingdom as well. And guess what happened the day after that? Nigeria and Russia signed military agreement. This is another massive OPEC producing country. So now you have Russia protecting not only Saudi Arabia, but another massive cog in the OPEC machinery. The day after that, Russia comes out in an article on Zero Hedge, who I know you're close with. They publish everything that you do. And you can find it on Zero Hedge, an article that says Russia announces all nuclear-powered submarines contain hypersonic ICBM missiles. This is Putin's way of saying, don't fuck with us, don't even think of fucking with us the way you did Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi, both of which who threatened to sell their oil for anything other than U.S. dollars. Things are getting really, really, really crazy, as you note, right? So, you know, you are seeing not only a drive of global trade routes and infrastructure being built, superseding the dollar at this point. You're seeing gold reclassified on par with the dollar as the world's only other tier one asset. And now you're beginning to see the petro status start to wane. Well, it gets worse than that. If we look at number 3 biggest move, biggest road sign in all of this, it is the weaponizing of the U.S. dollar, kicking Russia out of SWIFT. Now, this is the question that I was asking you. Is this intended or is this not intended? Because you have to be an idiot to not understand what's about to happen. By doing so, by weaponizing the dollar as the world reserve currency, it is not our business to say who can and who can't use it. It's not our job. And all that does is undermine the credibility of the currency itself, right? This should be for global opinion, not for the U.S. Sure. So in any case, we kick Russia out of SWIFT, directly into the open arms of the Chinese, who have the CIPS system, the Cross Interbank Payment System, which mirrors the SWIFT, directly into the coalition of the BRICS nations, right? So you're talking about Russia and China now, at this point, are doing trades in energy for not only the Chinese digital yuan, the Chinese petro yuan bond, which is immediately convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, by the way, where Russia sells oil, Iran sells oil, Nigeria sells oil. They have agreed to sell their oil to China for the petro yuan bond. And Saudi Arabia said they're negotiating it. When they say that publicly, they're doing it. All of these countries are selling their oil to China for a yuan-denominated bond that is immediately convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. This is how they all sidestep sanctions. Anyways, it's getting more and more, it's starting to speed up. You see the India-Iran north-south corridor, which is it's safe passage from India all the way to Russia past Iran. These are very exclusive trade routes. Everyone else has to go around the Strait of Hormuz. You see India come out, we're their largest trading partner. India says we're going to do domestic trades in rupee now for imports and exports, not in dollars. You see the BRICS nations come out and say Saudi Arabia and Turkey to join BRICS soon. What did they just say? Saudi Arabia is going to join the BRICS nations. That's in an article published July 14th. It's what you were talking about. Everyone says, what the hell? What are you talking about? The dollar hegemony is right about ready to break when you realize Saudi Arabia is moving into the BRICS nations, Egypt and Turkey as well. Do you really think that our president, who can't even hardly tie his shoes and say 3 words cohesive at once, is going to fly to Saudi Arabia when he hasn't even been to the Mexico-Texas border to ask for more oil when we're trying to destabilize and ruin their way of life going completely green? Of course not. He went there to beg them not to join BRICS, but I would argue when they say BRICS expects them to join it soon, it's already done. What makes the dollar the world reserve currency? The protection of the Saudi kingdom, who is now going to join the BRICS nation. And what did we see a day or two later? 10 days later, July 14th, Russia and China are brewing up a challenge to dollar dominance by creating the world reserve currency. They came out and publicly said, we are issuing a new BRICS reserve currency.
Yep.
And is Saudi Arabia part of that yet? How about Turkey? Looks to ditch dollar in payment for Russian energy. An article on July 20th. When you put all of this together, you see a trend. That trend, when you put all of these countries together, Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa, Iran just joined, Venezuela just joined, Turkey's going to join, Saudi Arabia's going to join. All of the Eastern European countries that I told you about that repatriated their gold, most of them, Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Turkey, these countries, they're all part of the European Union, but they all trade their own currency. They don't use the euro. They're all copiously continuing to accumulate gold. They're all going to break away from the Western system. So let me tell you how it all happens. How do you get the Great Reset? How does all of this happen? I'll tell you exactly how. You blow assets up after you get COVID. You blow assets, or you blow prices up to all-time highs by injecting more money in the country in 3 years than it has printed in its entire history prior. You keep interest rates low, where you incentivize big funds to borrow money at next to nothing and put it into assets, stocks, bonds, real estate, everything. Blow them up to all-time highs. They can pay off those loans without even blinking an eye. Make huge bonuses from their commercial banks. Drive the prices of everything sky high. And then what? You incentivize Russia into finding a backdoor by weaponizing the dollar. And everyone else, look at China. They've sold $100 billion in our bonds in the last 6 months, and their eyes are on Taiwan. You think they'll ever buy our bonds again? If they're thinking, are we next? Are they going to freeze our assets? Are they going to sanction us? No, they're not. And so here's how it happens. All it really takes, and I'd like your comment on this, is for Saudi Arabia, who's now being protected by Russia, Nigeria, who's now being protected by Russia, is part of the Belt Road Initiative, so also being protected by China. The Russia-China relationship never has been stronger. The BRICS coalition has never been stronger. Now Saudi Arabia joins BRICS and says, thanks for the memories, guys. It's been great, but we're now going to issue oil globally in rupee, in ruble, in gold, in euro, okay, and in dollars too. And if you remember that every country on the planet Earth has had to own dollars to buy oil for the last 50 years, when this admission happens, and I believe it'll happen on a Sunday night here in the United States, Monday morning, all of the leaders of the BRICS nations will be arm in arm with their arms around each other saying, we have now issued a new world reserve currency, which they already did. You got the success of the Chinese digital yuan, a yuan who's done almost 20 billion in sales successfully, starting in the Winter Olympics for the past few years on the Belt Road. And I think they will all use the success of this new distributed ledger technology and issue a new BRICS currency. It'll be a digital currency. The question is, do they peg gold to it? Because remember, gold has been reclassified a Tier 1 asset. Why did they do gold? Why not the special drawing rights? Why gold? Who are the biggest producing countries in the world of gold? The RICS and BRICS, Russia, China, India, and South Africa as well. Russia, China, India, South Africa, you throw Brazil in there. Now you've got all of these other countries that are joining, Venezuela and Iran and Saudi Arabia. And all of these countries are accumulating gold. Are they going to peg it to gold, to a new world reserve currency, denominated backed on the new success of the Chinese digital yuan? Are they going to do that? Or is that going to come after Saudi Arabia says we're going to issue all of these, we're going to sell oil in all of these currencies? But what happens? Here's what happens. Every currency on the planet starts to dump dollars. Every country on the planet starts to dump dollars. Why do they dump dollars? Because they don't need to buy oil with it anymore. They've had to hold it as the foundation of their currency forever to buy oil. Now they don't have to, and they can use other currencies. So as they start to dump dollars, the dollar becomes a hot potato. By Monday morning, you have a flood of dollars as every country is racing, just like in trading places. Sell, Mortimer, sell. They're going to be telling us, sell, sell, sell. Everyone's dumping dollars. The dollar comes home and it's collapsed, right? There's pillar number one, the dollar crashes. When the dollars come home, creates massive hyperinflation, much worse than what the Fed has any intention of fighting, right? So hyperinflation, what happens to interest rates? Does the dirty work directly for the Fed. Interest rates spike to the moon. What happens to stocks, bonds, and real estate? They vaporize in a matter of minutes. So when you talk about the Great Reset, and you see that moving away from the dollar, when you see that what is basically happening is almost 90% of human population, when you factor in the Belt Road Initiative is 75%, And that's just China and Africa. You throw in the rest of the countries that are part of this, you're talking the majority of the human population on this planet is moving away from the dollar, learning settlement on a new digital yuan that could very well become a digital BRICS currency, that could very well be pegged on a distributed ledger. It won't be convertible, because De Gaulle from France proved that convertible currencies convert, but will be pegged using distributed ledger technology by the largest importers, producers, and owners of gold in the world. And they will peg gold to a new distributed ledger technology and watch what happens to the dollar in a matter of moments. It's your great reset, where all four pillars of wealth in this country simultaneously collapse: stocks, bonds, real estate, and the dollar. Now, I would like to ask you, am I off base? Am I smoking something? Or does this sound like something that is not only plausible, but maybe even it's happening?
No, the sickest thing about it is, as I sit here and listen to you lay that out over the course of 10 minutes, the absolutely sickest thing is you can draw with a crayon from fucking point 1 to point 2 to point 3. Your email.
Така, това беше видеото за големия ресет. Според Анди Schectman. Общо взето той го вижда от страна на щатите и как това ще повлияе на щатите и как всъщност е добре за златото и за среброто. От друга страна, аз обаче не мисля, че всичките хора, които са качулени в тима на Клаус Шваб, ще изпуснат толкова лесно кормилото и ще продължат по някакъв начин да съществуват. Не забравяйте, че най-важното на една валута, независимо дали е вързана към златото, дали е вързана към биткоин или на Ledger Technology, както той говори, е, че тя е използвана за контрол, нали, за да може да се облагат данъци хората. Така че Русия и Китай, когато имат валута, и другите БРИКС държави, които той говори, не значи, че е по-добре от долар. Може и по-зле да е, може и по-добре да е. Проблема е, че в момента силата е концентрирана в едно място и това е долара. Когато това нещо се разбие, защото то ще се разбие при всички случаи, силата може да се концентрира в няколко огромни образования и тогава ще живеем точно както Оруел предрича, 3 огромни връждуващи се държави помежду си. За съжаление, но там отиват нещата. Много пъти в интернет пише Оруел не е написал книга, е написал инструкция или ръководство, как да се въведе това нещо. Както и да е, искам да се извиня, нали, за лошото качество на субтитрите. Имах проблеми с това, но и факта е, че толкова време ми отне, просто е трудна работа да се пишат субтитри. Някой ми беше казал да пиша субтитри на английски, това ще ми отнеме адски много време, така че не е лесно. Въпреки това се опитам да се постарая. Пак извинявам се за лошото качество, за многото граматически грешки, които предполагам, че почти всеки ред в този поток има граматическа грешка. Опитах се. Надявам се да ви е харесало това видео и отново нямам идея да се съединявам към гледна точка на Анди, просто ми хареса начина, по който той обобщава нещата и начина, по който ги вижда. Начина, по който аз ги виждам, е малко по-различен и мисля да направя и след време видео за това нещо, но това беше за сега. Благодаря за вниманието, сложете едно харесване, бъдете здрави и надявам се да ви е харесало видеото.